Hey friends, and welcome to this little cosplay vlog of how I made Himiko Toga. I made this cosplay for Smash last year, but I finally compiled videos to put a vlog together. The first thing that I did for the cosplay was make the mask out of 2mm foam, and to do that I basically traced a COVID mask and then glued it together. The next thing that I wanted to focus on was the collar. Bear in mind that I did this very last minute. I'm pretty sure it was the night before. So I kind of threw together some toilet paper rolls filled with paper and then covered in foam clay. Once they were dry, I painted them. Just a white undercoat to get it started. I then continued with the mask and got some corrugated pipe from Bunnings, cut up some small pieces and glued it. This little fabric collar part was actually made by my friend Mads, who came in clutch and sewed it together for me a couple of days before the con. The plan was to just pin it up and then wear it underneath my cardigan that I already had. Now for the collar, the canisters needed something to sit on, so I was to create the base out of the thicker foam that I already had. My knife wasn't that sharp, so it was very rough around the edges, figuratively and literally. I did attempt to kind of file it down to try and make it a little bit more smoother, but I was on a time crunch, so I just kind of let it be and just tried to shape it the way that I wanted. Toga has some teeth on her collar, so I just basically traced it out where I wanted the teeth and then tried to see how I would glue it together before I painted. It was a little bit chunky to begin with, so I did have to trim it down just a little bit before I glued it. I also did majority of this on stream, so there are parts missing, especially when I literally walked away from the camera to spray paint things. Now for this part, I had a bright idea of painting the white teeth on the main part of the collar, then getting the black 2mm foam and literally slapping it on top while it was still wet to get an exact trace of the teeth. That way when I cut it out after a few coats, then I could just stick it on exactly where I wanted it. I felt pretty smart figuring that out. And yes, because of the paint I was using and the foam itself, I did need to do quite a few coats. In between drying, I went outside and I spray painted the canisters silver with the leftover silver paint that I had from my Midna helmet. Then it was time to actually paint the base of the collar, which is a dark blue. I didn't have a lot of blue paint, so I actually had to mix together quite a few different shades just to get a dark blue color. I also had no time to run out and get more paint, so this was just what I had to deal with. It didn't take as many coats because the grey of the foam actually kind of absorbed it and made it darker already, so I was kind of happy just doing 1 or 2 coats. Soon it was time to do the back of it, and it was getting kind of dark at this point if I remember correctly, so I literally was painting and then putting the bits and pieces in front of the heater so they would dry while I was working on other parts. I also decided to use the already cut kind of puzzle piece shaped edges to glue the front and the back together. It made it a lot easier and a lot smoother when I actually glued it down. I also spray painted the corrugated piping silver as well before I attached it to the mask, but I realized I should have probably undercoated because the silver paint itself wasn't staying on it and was coming off when I was gluing. It was kind of tedious, but I did get it to work. As you can see, I hold it up to the camera here and bits of the paint has fallen off, so I did just have to go and retouch it up with some acrylic paint. The next thing that I wanted to do is the bits and pieces that Himiko Toga has on her waist and her legs. She has some little boxes, I want to say, or containers that basically hold the poison that she has. So in between cutting out the teeth and making sure that they were perfect, I also cut those out. But I used both the 2mm foam and the bigger foam as well. As you can see here, while I was cutting out the teeth, they weren't quite dry, so I was accidentally leaving some fingerprints on them, but that's okay, because I did a couple more coats before I actually glued them onto the base of the collar. The little containers and the bottles that she has on the back full of the poison are a turquoisey blue kind of color, and I went to Bunnings and got some blue spray paint, which was at the beginning of the video, to paint them. I also painted them while it was dark outside, so I was spray painting inside. If you do that, please make sure it's well ventilated or you are wearing a mask. And I had to let them dry in front of the heater. That little snippet of video was the teeth finally glued to the collar. And this is me putting together the little boxes that I paint blue. Looking back, I really wish I had my Dremel at this point so I could properly sand them down, because basically I cut out a bunch of rectangles that were roughly all the same size. the 2mm was slightly bigger than the thicker ones, and then just completely glued them to each other. Just kind of stacking them like a sandwich. I also included small parts of the 2mm foam to make a front, side, and back to the little boxes, just to make sure they were sealed on all sides and give it more of a smoother look. Although the front was kind of dodgy, I was hoping that the paint would cover it up a little bit more. I think I made 4 little boxes in total, 2 different types. The 2 at the front were the sandwich looking ones that were all stacked together, and then the last 2 were just these thick, long rectangles that I added a little bit more details to, that I tried to make look like little drawers. I don't know, I was going off a reference image and that's kind of how they ended up. You won't see it in the video either, but I did cut up a long bit of elastic for around my waist and some elastic for my thighs before gluing them onto the boxes. This is the collar with the teeth and the canisters glued to the side, the mask with the corrugated piping, and the bottles and boxes on the elastics all painted blue. This is me trying on the outfit all together. The cardigan was from Big W, the tights and the skirt were from Black Milk Clothing. I just put up my hair in buns, and this is the final product.